student in Team Schmidt Research Group. I recently submitted my thesis, and today I'm going to talk about part of my PhD project, not the whole one, but part of that we did recently. And it's about the magnetic field effects on triplet annihilation. Just in case to bring everyone to the same page, I was thinking that maybe I should introduce the thing that I did in my PhD. As we all know, solar energy are very important these days, and solar lights produce clean and accessible energy for everyone. But the problem in here is that solar cells cannot absorb all the wavelengths in the sunlight. For example, those wavelengths, those photons that doesn't have enough energy to be able to absorb, to overcome the band gap of the solar cells will be wasted. Mostly this part of the wavelength, which is in the red region, will be wasted and cannot be absorbed by the solar cells, or those photons that has energy more than the band gap, waste the energy through the thermalization. So in case that we want to have efficient solar cells, we need to be able to use these parts of the energy as well. My project was about the process which is called up conversion, to be able to use those photons that doesn't have enough energy to be able absorbed by the solar cells. In the up conversion process, we have two different kinds of the molecules, sensitizer and emitter molecules. First of all, we excite sensitizer molecule to singlet excited states, and then through the intersystem crossing, these photons transfer to the triplet states. And then through the triplet energy transfer, these energy transfer to the second kind of the molecule, emitter, I mean. And then two of these emitter collide with each other or transfer energy between each other through the triplet annihilation, and therefore one of them excited to the singlet excited state while the other one back to the ground state. And finally, we will get emission out of the singlet excited state of one of these emitters. So as you can see, two low energy photons converted to the higher energy one. But this up conversion system has some problem. One of the problems with the up conversion system is that they are oxygen sensitive. I mean that when you have oxygen in your system, oxygen will quench the triplet states of your emitter and so destroy your up conversion system. But in case that we want to finally use up conversion system in a real solar cell, we need to be able to overcome this problem. The other problem with the up conversion system is that the kind of the up conversion system that existed until now just could absorb those photons in the visible region. But if we want to use these things finally on the real solar cells, we need to be able to absorb those photons below this band gap, for example, silicon band gap. So in my project, I was using these two chemicals as the compounds for my up conversion system. I'm not going to explain these things in detail, but just probably you should know that this huge molecule at the left side of the screen is Weyl-Antron molecule, which was my emitter. Weyl-Antron has triplet state below the oxygen. So oxygen cannot kill its triplet states, and that's the thing that we suppose by using this molecule, probably we can do up conversion in oxygen. The right molecule, the right side molecule is PBS quantum dots. That in here we did some ligand exchange on that one. This is not the one that we use to absorb below the silicon band gap, but just today I'm using these two to explain part of the work. So in the project, we mixed these two kind of the molecules together, and we were thinking that, okay, we are going to excite the PBS quantum dots, then transfer energy to the ligand exchange molecule, which was tipcetrazine, and then transfer the energy to Weyl-Antron molecules, and then triplet annihilation between these Weyl-Antron molecules will result in up conversion. And we were thinking that, as I mentioned before, because the triplet state of the violantron is below the oxygen, we didn't expect to see any quenching by oxygen in here. When we did some time resolved photoluminescence on our material, we noticed that oxygen didn't kill our, not only didn't kill our upconversion system, but also even helped it and improved the photoluminescence signal much more than the time that we didn't have oxygen in here. So as you can see, if you compare these two plots, you will notice that how much the signal was stronger when we put oxygen in. And the other thing was that oxygen make the transfer of the energy faster than the time that we didn't have oxygen in. So the rise time happened earlier in this case. So the results of these experiments has been published already in Nature Photonics. But as the next question that came into our mind was that, is the mechanism of the reaction the same in the time that we have oxygen and we don't have oxygen? So we had two assumptions that maybe when we have oxygen in, still we have the TTA between two violantron molecules. So two violantron indeed in their triplet states will transfer energy between these states, and the same thing as the TTA happening here. The second assumption was maybe singlet oxygen will excite the violantron to its triplet, and then the second oxygen excited more to its singlet states, and then we get emission from there. In terms of understanding that which of these mechanisms is possible, is happening really in the sample with oxygen in, we did magnetic field effect measurements. Through the literature, we knew that if we have TTA, by doing the photoluminescence in the magnetic field effect, we should see decrease in the PL intensity during the experiment by increasing the field. So we did this experiment once without oxygen and once with oxygen, and surprisingly, we noticed that when we have oxygen inside the qubits inside our samples, there is no TTA apparently anymore. Because we didn't see any change in the PL, the delta PL is constant, and so we concluded that the second mechanism must be correct for the time that we have oxygen inside. But we needed to beat these data, and probably, the present model, magnetic field effect model, couldn't describe these things, so we needed to do some more measurements. The kind of the magnetic field setup that we have used was this magnetic field setup. You can see a magnet in here with a power about with a field about 300 Gauss, I think, 300 Gauss, and the sample deposited located between these two fields. Then the excited light comes this way. If you look at the red arrows, hit to the sample, and then the emitted light collected by some optics below this foil, and then sent to the fiber couple cable, and went to spectrometer to do some analysis from that. Later, to make the system better, the setup better, to collect more light, we did some changes on our setup by adding this off-axis parabolic mirror, and so we collected the emitted light by this parabolic mirror and sent it to up to the system somewhere in here, to some optics in here, and then from there to our spectrometer, so we could follow the PL measurement during the different magnetic field better in this case. And in terms of doing the, because we were also eager to know that what will happen in high magnetic fields. So we used another magnet with about 15,000 Gauss field, and we use this setup. In the left side you can see our magnet, and the sample were deposited somewhere between these two parts of the magnet, and all other parts of the setup was located on the top part of our setup on optical table. So if you look at here, the excitation came from here, bounced through some optics, passed through dichroic mirror, went to the fiber optical cable, and then in the right side you see that it goes down to here, hit our sample, and then the emitted light collected again by the same fiber optical comes up to the optical table again, and this time our dichroic mirror reflected the light into the spectrometer. So we measured the photoluminescence during the time that we had a magnetic field around our sample. So we changed the magnetic field and we measured the PL to understand that how magnetic field affects our PL. All right, so about the magnetic field effect, many people considered this effect on triplet annihilation before. Merrifield described a theory previously, which was the simplest theory, which is talk about the attenuation of the PL in result of by increasing the magnetic field in solid phase. Later, Atkins and Evans reproduced this one to another equation model in solution that we have some tunneling and also diffusion. But these models has a defect that they couldn't describe the magnetic field effect in very high excitation power, which I'm going to explain it a bit more. So for checking the systems and modeling stuff, we did some experiments with some well-known upconversion systems like platinum oxide porphyrin and DPA. As you can see here, by when we did some magnetic field effect, I mean, we measured photoluminescence of this material, this upconversion system. When we applied some magnetic field on that, we noticed that by increasing the field as we expected, the PL diminished, and even by increasing. Oh, I forgot to say this one, that we did some power dependency measurement first to recognize the different region of conversion, the linear and quadratic part, and then we chose different powers in both of these region, and then we used these powers, did the measurement in the magnetic field, and we noticed these results that by increasing the excitation power, we see less changes in the PL, and also by increasing the field have the same influence on our PL, I mean less change in the PL. The surprising, the interesting thing that was also reported before was that in very high magnetic fields, you can see that the plot jump again, so it goes up. This is the thing that Atkins model couldn't describe. There are some assumptions in the paper, but none of them has been accepted yet. That these things, this jump in the PL, is because of the T2 channel in molecules. So when you excite your molecule with a more powerful excitation, or apply higher fields to your sample, then they will go to the T2 channel, and they T2 channel, and you won't see this jump at the end of the flight. slots. So we chose perylene as our emitter this time. And we did the same experiment in here because perylene has high amount of the quantum fields, something like 96%. And the T2 channel is inaccessible in this case. It's about 4 electron volts, I think. So it's inaccessible. And we did the same experiment in here. And as we expected to see, there is no jump at the end of the plots, but you see the same things happen to the delta PL during the measurements. So now it was time for modeling things that we observed. And first of all, probably it would be good to say that compare the low power and high power density that we apply on our sample. So if we say that F is the fraction of the triplet decay by the ionization, I put this photo of the of conversion on the top right side of the slide to help you to see the parameter that I'm talking about. K2 is the second order of the decay of the triplet, and K1 is the constant for the first order. And if we say that F is the fraction of the triplet that decay by ionization, we can describe it by this equation in here. So in low field, the concentration of the T would be low, because in this case, the dominant process is their radiative and non-radiative decays, and the rate determining step would be the TTA. So the T concentration, the triplet concentration would be low. So we can simplify our equation to the thing that you can see in here. We can ignore from K2 times concentration of the T. And here you see that the magnetic field depends on K2S, which is this part. Okay. If we imagine that the K1 is constant during our experiment. The second thing is about high power densities. That when we are working in a high power densities, the dominant process would be TTA. So we can ignore the concentration of the triplet. So we can ignore this parameter. The K1. We can ignore the K1 would be much less than the other parameter. So we can simplify this equation to K2S over K2. And in here, you will see that if the top part of the equation and the bottom part be equal to each other, then the magnetic field effect would be constant. And this just will happen the times that the T2 channel of the emitter has some T2 channels. I mean that in case that your emitter has T2 channel, then these two parameters would be equal, and then you can expect a magnetic field effect, constant magnetic field effect, which explain the things that I said in previous slide about accessibility of the T2 channel. So somehow we can accept that one, that's the thing that can happen. For doing some modification on Merrifield and Atkins model, so we started with this well-known equation about the rate of the decay of triplets. And if you solve this equation, you will get the concentration of T will be attained through this equation, and then you can multiply the top and down part of the both side to K1 over K2 over minus K1, and get this other equation. And by some simplification, we will achieve this one. This equation at the bottom. And finally, after lots of math, we will get also this equation in here that we used it to beat our perylene platinum octatyl porphyrin data with this equation, and we achieve these parameters for our equation. When we compare these numbers with the thing that has been reported previously, so we understand that the calculation is correct. But the aim of this calculation was to finding the age, and apparently if it goes to be able to use in modification of Merrifield equation. I'm not very familiar with how we are going to do these things, because this is a thing that other group will do. I'm an experimental chemist, so just know that these are the things that we have achieved, and then later these parameters will go to be used in theoretical calculations. And yes, so I think that at the end I would like to say thanks to all of these people, especially to Jared group for all the theoretical parts of this experiment, and Dane and Murad for their magnets, and also Shamal and Tim, my supervisor, for all of the direction and guidance and everything. And thank you for listening.
Very good. Thank you very much for another interesting talk. So I'd like to open it up for questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I might jump in then. So your data that you showed there was that sort of uptick at really high fields. But I didn't really hear that talked about very much with the model, or I mean, can you comment on what might be happening where the magnetic field effect actually kind of changes, the slope changes at really, really high fields?
So the thing that I was suppose that you are asking is about this plot.
Yeah, where the arrows are there, how the slope changes.
Yes. So based on the Merrifield and other people that Atkins and these people, we expected to see diminish in TTA. So you know the PL will decrease. The delta PL will be less when you put some magnetic field on your sample. I should say that these triplets, maybe I can make it better like this, because when we have triplets, right, triplets are magnetic field dependent, but singlets are not. So when we put magnetic field on our TTA samples, they cannot collide or transfer energy to each other. So we expect to have less TTA when we apply some magnetic field on our TTA system. So we expect to have less intense PL. So by increasing the magnetic field, we expect that the PL intensity should decrease. That's the thing that we see in here. But strange thing is that in some cases, like for example, DPA, it goes up. It's increased again, which people couldn't explain it, that why it's happening very high fields. So they had some assumption about that maybe it's because of the T2 channels. So we did some experiment with a material that didn't have a T2 channel, and we realized that yes, we don't see that that jump in the PL in that case. And then we try to explain these things through some equation in the next slide. That's I explained it in here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I get you. There's some questions in the chat. Do you have the chat window open?
Somehow missed everything.
Michael Kamel says, what is the conversion efficiency of this system compared to other up conversion systems such as rare earth doped materials?
The one that I already mentioned at the top, already the efficiency is so low, but there are some plans to improve this one, which I'm not quite sure that if I'm allowed to talk about it, but you know, already the kind of the molecule that I showed in here with the quantum dots, you know, when you do some ligand exchange on the quantum dots, you will improve the transfer of energy from your sensitizer to emitter, and you will improve the efficiency of your system. But in case of the kind of the quantum dots, the size of the quantum dots that we used for absorbing below the silicon band gap, we didn't have right ligand to be able to do some ligand exchange on our quantum dots. So transferring energy from quantum dots to violantron was hard. So in the next step, we have some plan about doing some ligand exchange on those quantum dots to make it easier, and we are hoping to be able to improve the efficiency. And also, because of some reasons, we think that when we are doing these things in a solid phase, it will give us better result than the time that we are doing it in a solution, because the thing that I already mentioned was in solution, not in solid, but already is low.
Thank you. And there was a final question. What is the minimum power density needed to start up conversion so that it can be applicable to a solar cell?
I think that it must be something about the figure of merit must be about 0.1, I guess. So I'm not sure about the calculation that people do about how to calculate the power, but that is the minimum figure of merit that you will need to be able to use up conversion on real solars.
All right, thank you. It looks like there's no other questions unless anyone jumps in really quickly. So if there's no other questions, everyone, please join me in thanking our speaker one more time. And thank you for an interesting seminar.